Hello everyone, my name is John Bussard. I'm an HPE Business Transformation Center engineer for Ingram Micro. I help support HPE servers, blade system storage, as well as Aruba networking technology solutions. In my videos, what I like to do is show you a slide from a popular PowerPoint and then demonstrate to you what that means within a management context. Today, we're going to be continuing on our discussion with HPE's GreenLake platform, but specifically, we're going to be looking at template groups from within Aruba Central today. Now, template groups can certainly manage switches, but really anything that's within Aruba Central we can manage with this type of configuration context. I chose this slide because we're going to be dealing with the CX switch today, but I like tagline, simplify the way customers build, deploy, and manage wired networks. I also like the orange tile around automation on this, because certainly this does allow us to add a level of automation through a programmatic nature within our environment. Some people like the user interface, some people like template groups. I know what I call support. They'll ask me what I'm using within my environment. But I'll let you choose what you'd like to utilize. I would say that if you have a very large amount of switches within your environment and are looking to have a way of manipulating them in an easy to use fashion, this might be the route that you want to go to be able to do that, because again, the programmatic nature allows you to be able to change things based on conditions within your environment. So with all that being said, let's explore this management context. Okay, here we are up within the GreenLake platform. If you look at the cloud as being more of an experience and less as a destination, HPE brings that experience to on-prem hardware. And certainly that can be the cost model, pay for what you utilize on-site on an ongoing basis. Right? I see those tiles within GreenLake Central, but there's also the day-to-day maintenance. So Compute Ops allows you to manage on-prem client servers. The Data Services Cloud Console allows me to manage HPE storage solutions, and then Aruba Central allows me to manage HPE network solutions from the cloud. Okay, we're up within Aruba Central here. Now I've went into that tile. I'm going to show you real quick how I'm going to do these demonstrations. So I'm going to make changes within the interface, and then I have a putty session open up here that I could see the changes locally in the config file on the switch. Now, I don't want you to think you have to be local to see those changes. You can actually go down to, there's a variety of ways, but you could certainly get a console connection. I could go down here, select console, select my device type. We're going to do this switch here. That's the one we'll be managing today, and then I'll log into that. And I could certainly do things like a good old-fashioned show run, right? And we can see what's going on inside the switch from the cloud. It just makes it a little bit quicker, though, if I can just show you what's going on within the putty session. So templates are implemented through groups, and that's why we call them template groups. Now, you can get to managing templates and template groups over here under the groups context. So if I click this gear icon, it'll bring me to all the groups that are created in this environment. And none of them right now support template groups, but I'll show you how to do that in a second. I can also get to the same context over here by selecting organization, and then selecting groups. Then I'll be in the same context. All right, so let's go over here and let's add a group. We'll call this Ingram Micro Template Group. And certainly I could do access points, gateways, as well as switches. And here I need to check this box here or switch this over. You can see I could use template groups for both access points and gateways as well as switches. We're just going to do switches, so I'm going to deselect access points and gateways for right now. I'm going to click next. And certainly we could do AOS-based switches as well as CX-based switches, or both. We're just going to do CX switches. Now I'm going to click add. So what I'll go through and what I'll show you will be applicable to the other devices as well. So I can tell that this group has been created right here, and the little TG in front over here tells me that this is a template group. If I go look under my groups, you'll see this template group exists here, and you can see a little TG over here. Now if I select that, there's nothing reporting yet because you don't have any applications, but I can go down to devices, right, and then go into the config context, and we can see this is where I'll create my templates that I can apply to all my switches in the environment. These are the variables I'm going to have within this context. So these are things that can change between individual switches or devices in this environment. Configuration audit, this is where I'll go to see if my configuration's been pushed down or if there's been any errors within the template. All right, so one thing I'd like to point out right now is there are no variables listed in here. Once I import my first switch, some variables are going to start to be created. So let's go back on over and manage our groups. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this switch that's over here and I'm going to move that into this template group. So I'll move that. You can see that we have one device in that group now. We see that device is listed down here. All right, so let's go into that group. Again, we'll go back down to devices. And now if I look under variables now, you'll see that I have a few variables that are listed. You can see sys host name, so that'll be the host name of the switch. We can see MAC address as well as serial. Right, but you notice the only one I can really edit here is the host name, because that's the only thing that changes between each of these systems. Right, so I can't edit the MAC address and I can't edit the serial number of a system, for example. So now we gotta create a template configuration. So we're going to go over the templates. I'm going to click the plus sign here, and we'll give the template a name. We'll just call this Ingram Micro template. We can choose our device type. Again, we could have multiple devices, but we're just managing Aruba CX switches from this context. You can actually select the model of switch if you want to, and that allows you to have different configurations for different switch types in your environment. And you can do model and you can leave it all, but you actually can select the specific switch if you want to. Right, for our context, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this at all, and then we could also even nail down what version of software code we'd want to use. But again, we'll use all. Right, so all the CX switches this template will apply to. We'll click next. And now we'll start putting our config file. And that's pretty much, if I did a show run here, and this is on the punny session on the local switch, and I started maybe copying that config all the way through and then pasting that over here, that would certainly work for this. But what's probably a little bit better is if you import the configuration. And that'll be right up here. You'll select that and it'll show a listing of all the switches you have in the environment. I just have this one switch, so I'm going to select that switch. All right, and you can see that it's imported this configuration. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to click Save. Now, one thing I would like to note is we have a sys host name variable. If I look in the switch, and again, if I do a show run, right, and I look at the host name in the config file on the local switch, you can see it's got that name, which reflects what we have here, and I could certainly change that if I wanted to. Right, now, if I look at the template configuration and I edit that, we'll scroll down and we'll look at the host name. Let's see where it is. It might be a little bit higher. We can see the host name has %, sys host name, and %. So these little percentages, they indicate that we are dealing with a variable inside that environment. In this case, this variable is going to be this right here. Right? And even in this context, I can go through and change this. So maybe I want to put a TG in front of this for template group, and then save that. And I'll see that change happen. Now, the way I'll look to see if that change has been pushed yet is I'll look under Configuration Audit. And I'll see one device not in sync over here. And I can view details. And it can show me what has not been pushed yet. Right. I can also go over to the list here And we see this says it's in sync. So if it wasn't in sync, this would say it was not in sync. And I would imagine I go back to the context and then back in the configuration audit, you'll see that we're in sync at this point. So if I go over here, and I hit enter a few times, you see the host name has changed. Right? So we could do a variety of things. I could go back to the template. We'll select the template and I'll edit it. And maybe I want to add another VLAN to this configuration. So we'll go down to the VLANs here. Maybe I want to add 181. We'll click Save. Now when I edit the template, any switches that are a part of this group that fit this defining nature will get this configuration change. All right, so I changed all the switches I would have in this environment. And once again, we can go over to Configuration Audit and scroll down. We can see one device is not in sync. I can view details to see what's not in sync yet. And I can also look at List over here. And we can see over here it says it's in sync. So I'd imagine if I go back to that and refresh it, right, it'll say everything's in sync. Right, and then I can go down here and we'll do another show run. And then we can see that VLAN has been pushed down. That's certainly one way you can manage switches inside your environment. Now, what we really want to look at as a part of these configurations are the variables. It's what's going to allow us to be able to have changes or differences between different switches. For example, like IP addresses or something like that would be, you'd want to be different on different switches for management concerns. So let's kind of look at doing that. So what you're going to want to do is download a sample variables file, and you can do it in JSON, you can do CSV. I'm just going to do it in CSV. I think it might be a little bit easier. All right, we'll take that file down, and then we'll open that. We'll expand this on out. And we can see that our variables exist. All right, so we've got a serial number and a MAC address. So we should have a serial number and MAC address for every switch that we have in this environment. And then we could see our host name. So in this case, it's blank because we don't have necessarily that configured for the serial number. We could change it inside this environment. So our sys host name right now is set to this. But let me set it to this right now. So I'll change it to show you that these things can be changed. Okay. Now I can also add other variables to this if I wanted to. So maybe I want to add VLAN. So I'll create a variable called VLAN. And then maybe that VLAN I want to have an IP address sometimes, and sometimes I don't. So I'm going to do want IP as a variable maybe. And then I will do IP. All right, so in this case, with this switch, with this serial number, I'll add 182. Right now, I'll say put an N for want IP, and then for the VLAN IP, I'll add this address. And we'll do a /24. All right, so now we have these variables added in this environment. Now there's one column I haven't talked about yet, and that's this modified. We will want to change that, but right now I'm going to save this. We'll save as, we'll call it our sample file, but we'll call it mod. So I got this file saved. Let's go back inside Aruba Central. I'm going to select Upload Variables file. So I'm going to select that. Here's the one we modified. You click Open. It says no changes detected. Please ensure you've marked the modified column as Y. All right, so if I've changed some switches and haven't changed other switches, again, you'd have a whole listing of different serial numbers. You'd want to change this column. So I did change this. So I'm going to add the Y. I'm going to save that again. And once again, we'll upload this variables file. All right, we didn't get that error. As we can see, the upload has been successful. Now the changes will show up, but I'm going to try to move it along a little bit quicker, and we will just refresh our view here, and we could see that now these variables do exist. All right, so what can we do with these variables? Well, we can put them into our template file. So let's go do that. And go over to templates. There's our template file. I'm going to edit that. And the first thing we'll do is maybe we'll add our new VLAN. So variables are done through percentages. So I'm going to do a percent VLAN and percent. All right, and again, if we look at our file, that should equal this for this switch. We'll click Save. And then we can go under Configuration Audit. Go down, we can see, looks like all our devices are in sync. I'm going to go over and look at list real quick. We can see over here it says it's not in sync, so I may want to go back to the configuration audit. Let's see over here. It says one device is not in sync. I can view details. Now that this is blank this time, it tells me kind of it's in sync and it's been pushed out. We're just seeing a little bit of delay up here, and if we go to the list view here, we can see that it is in sync. So our config should have made it down. Let's go take a look at our putty session. I'll do a show run, and certainly we could see that VLAN has been pushed down to this switch. So we can add a programmatic nature to our configuration files as well from within our templates. So for example, let's go back over to templates, right? And if I look at the config file here, we see we have want IP as well as VLAN IP. So we're going to use some of that within this configuration context. I'm going to click Edit here, and I'm going to go down to where the VLANs are. All right, and that'll be way down at the bottom. Let's see, there it is. I'm going to hit Enter, and then what we'll do is we're going to do interface VLAN, and again I'm going to use that variable, so percent VLAN, percent, oops, gotta make sure I do percent. We're going to hit enter, and now I'm going to do some logic into this. So percent if want IP equals Y. If you remember, we have a variable over here, want IP. So if that equals Y, what we will do is IP address, and again we'll use the percent VLAN IP. And again, that was another one of our variables that we had over here in our config file. Right. And then we got to close the loop out again, so we're going to do present and if, and that should do it. We're going to click Save. All right, and then this will get pushed out to our switch. So again, we could look under Configuration Audit over here, and we can see not in sync, or it looks like we're all in sync. But let's go look at the list view. And we can see over here it says not in sync. So I'd imagine if we refresh this over here, we'd see one device is not in sync. We could view the details. Because this is blank again, I think that our sync has made it down, or our changes have made it down. But if we go over to list again, I will see everything's in sync over here. So that's good. So let's go take a look at our configuration. So I'm going to do a show run again, and we'll go all the way down to the bottom. And we'll see the interface has been created, but we don't see the IP has been added. And that's because if we look under variables, we'll see that we've set this for N, right? So that didn't invoke the logic in our environment. We could also look at the spreadsheet. So let's change that. So I'll go over here and I'll change that to a Y, and we'll click Save. All right, and now we'll see if that gets pushed down to our environment. So again, we could go over to the list view, and we'll see what we could see in this environment. So what's over here? It says it's not in sync. Again, we could go over to the config view, and as well as configuration audit, and we could scroll down. We see one device not in sync. I could do view details, and again, because this is blank, it's telling me that's probably made it down. So I could probably go back over to the list view, and then we will see that it is in sync at this time. So let's go take a look, see if that logic was passed down. So I'll enter a bunch of times, and we'll do another show run. All right. And we'll go all the way down to the bottom of this config file where the VLANs are. And then we can see the interface VLAN 82, and we can also see the IP addresses have been assigned. Right, so this allows us to be able to manage across all of our switches. And again, we could do that through editing the spreadsheet file that we have here, which will include all the serial numbers for all the switches, or we could do that inside this context. All right, so as you build out in your environment, you're going to get a lot of the same variable numbers across many MAC addresses, as well as many serial numbers into this environment. You kind of want to nail it down to one of the switches that maybe you'd want to change. What you do is you go under List View. You would then select that switch. You notice the context up in the corner has changed from the template group to that switch. Then we can go down to Devices, and then we'll see the variables that are just associated with this switch in particular, instead of all the serial numbers and all the MAC addresses within the environment. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it gives you a greater understanding of template groups, and you can certainly make the decision if you want to do the traditional user interface or through this programmatic nature of template groups. And please stay tuned for more videos.